Now, George Papaconstantinou was the man at the centre of the Greek economic and financial crisis that hit the country 8 years ago. When he became finance minister in October 2009, he uncovered the true extent of Greece's fiscal troubles and created a support mechanism for the country, including negotiating a €110 billion loan agreement with the EU and the IMF. Well, in the process, however, he also became what he describes as the perfect scapegoat for all the troubles of the country. Well, in a moment, I'll be speaking with George Papaconstantinou, but first, let's have a look back at 2010 when he met with IMF officials to secure that first, now infamous bailout.
It is an important day today. It is not an easy day, but it is a day in which we have the commitment of the Greek government to do whatever it takes to bring the economy back on a sustainable path, and the commitment of the Eurozone members to do whatever it takes to safeguard the stability of the Eurozone.
Greece is now in its third bailout, so what lessons have been learned? George Papaconstantinou is here with me now. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You've catalogued the tumult of the last few years and your involvement in that in your book, Game Over, which you've got a copy of there. You negotiated that bailout with the EU and IMF in return for pretty stringent austerity measures. There's no question about that. You were described at the time as Greece's most hated man, and to this day, some Greeks have never forgiven you for what you did.
No, this is true, but this is not just a personal story, cannot be. I just happened to be the man who had to take the tough decisions. Could have been someone else in my place. Hopefully they would have taken the same decisions. They were very tough but necessary decisions. What is sad is that we're 7, 8 years after the fact and we're still there. Greece is, as you said, in its third bailout, 110 billion in 2010, 130 billion in 2012, another 86 billion in 2015. And no end is in sight. And we are these days still caught up in yet another of negotiations and brinkmanships on all sides. And the economy has lost 25% of its output, and it's been an extremely painful path and very difficult for Greek citizens.
It's interesting you say hopefully other people would have made the same decisions. The point is they didn't, did they? The previous government knew what the state of the finances were, just how impoverished Greece was overall, and they didn't blow the whistle. You did. The Financial Times suggests that even to this day there are some people who believe that that day of reckoning was avoidable, that you could have avoided it.
I wish it were. The fact was that the markets knew very well that the country was running a deficit double than what it was declaring officially. Debt was over 300 billion, was very, very high. So there was no way to continue a charade, basically. Greece was living beyond its means. The day of reckoning had to come, and unfortunately Greece found itself in a very difficult position for the entire European Union, the Eurozone, where the markets were getting increasingly worried about rising levels of debt after Lehman Brothers and after the policies that were happening then. We were the canary in the coal mine. We were the first ones there, and others followed. You remember that after us, it was Portugal, it was Ireland. We just happened to be the first ones and got all the brunt of a Eurozone that was unprepared for a situation we thought it would never have to face.
Yeah, I mean, there are some who now believe that Greek accession to the European Union in the early 1980s, it was premature. That the country actually should not have been allowed in because its finances have been sketchy for a long time.
That is true. I think that for Greece, the overall has been positive despite all the pain of the last few years. I wish that we had been better prepared before we came into the Eurozone in 2000, and I wish that we had done the kind of necessary transformation after we came in. The fact was that Greece could borrow in the markets at the same rate that Germany could, and the markets were blindly offering funds to countries with very different risk profiles, assuming that in the Eurozone everyone's the same. Well, it was not, and we were not.
But the Greek tragedy, as it became, along with the crisis in other countries in the Eurozone, as you've outlined, that helped for some people in this country. It helped them realise that perhaps the European Union wasn't for the United Kingdom, and it helped propel this country towards the vote to leave. What are your views on Brexit?
I wonder if it was indeed the Eurozone troubles. My sense
part of it, simply one part of it.
My sense is that Britain's participating in the EU was never wholehearted. There was a sense of distance, not just geographical, but a sense of distance from the rest of the EU. Throughout this, it was not an enthusiastic, being part of something enthusiastically. So, yes, it is possible that the Eurozone troubles also played a role, but I think it was something much deeper. I happen to think that the decision to exit is not in the interests of Britain nor of the EU, but a decision has been taken.
Once that decision was taken last summer, we saw sterling fall pretty precipitously in the months afterwards, and it's still at a pretty low level compared to what it was before the referendum result. And that has made a lot of British companies really quite attractive and cheap in the eyes of some foreign conglomerates. And we saw recently the attempt by Kraft and Heinz in the United States to take over Unilever. Do you see perhaps other British companies, with sterling being so low and them being potentially undervalued, do you see perhaps British companies being ripe for picking by other foreign competitors?
I think it is possible. I think that despite the pushback against globalization that we see lately, it is an increasingly global economic environment. Companies are looking at the kind of economies of scale. So in an environment where the sterling is cheaper, British companies could become the target of takeovers.
What do you think the future is for the European Union? Britain wants to leave. Donald Trump thinks other countries might be leaving as well. He seems to think it's a good idea. Do you think the EU is as robust now as it ever has been? Or is it in a really parlous state?
In situations like that, there are two options. One is to sort of go into the direction of demise, and one after one people leave. The other is to get your act together and to circle the wagons. And I think we're in the second case. I think that once the elections are over in European countries, so the Netherlands coming up, the French election and the German election, and assuming these elections don't have huge surprises, I think there will be a determined attempt to bring the rest of the European Union and the Eurozone together with common policies, a number of things from defense to security to strengthening further the European Monetary Union, which is still incomplete.
Okay. George Papaconstantinou, it's good to have you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.